So welcome back, friends. Last night I was posed with a very interesting conundrum. It was a private message, and one of my subscribers asked me, if you had to choose only one axe of your entire collection, which number is probably close to 100, but you could only have one, which would it be? Well, today I'm going to share that with you. The first brand that washed out from my number one pick was any of the axes from Prandy, which was really disappointing to me because I love the handle shapes. I love the shapes of the heads. They're very innovative. They feel really good and they work well with the body. Problem with them, and I think I have 9 or 10 of them, every one that I own has a loose head. Every one I had. It's so, and some guys will say, well, that's not a big deal. You can make a new handle or you can re-wedge it and all of that. Yeah, that's true. However, it goes back to that same argument that we have with, the guys always make against like Glock pistols. Glock pistols, I have several of them. They never malfunction. There's no break-in period. You take them out of the box and they just work and they work and they work and they work. I mean, it almost has become the benchmark, what the standard of what what we expect for reliability. And you get something else and they say, well, you need to put 10 boxes through it or 2 boxes for it, so before it becomes reliable. Well, I say to that, no, because if Glock can do it, or if Granfors Bruk can make an axe handle that never comes loose, then why can't Prandy? Why can't the other manufacturers? So I just don't buy into that excuse. And if you're going to invest money in a nice tool like this, I mean, come on. You should not have to deal with a loose handle. So that, when I went and checked, even some of them that I hadn't used before, when I took them out and I checked them this morning, every one of them that I grabbed was loose, really loose, dangerously loose, and essentially unusable without putting a new handle in. All right, let's go to the second one I can't recommend. And that is the Husqvarna axes, which was really a disappointment to me because I have, when I first got these a couple years ago, I recommended these to a lot of people and I had really great luck with them. They were a great quality steel, of course Swedish made by one of the major manufacturers and rebranded for Husqvarna. But again, the same problem, whoever's making them, they're not hanging them correctly because I have 3 of them and I checked them all today. All 3 of them have loose handles. And again, if one manufacturer can do it, then why not everyone else? Yes, I know it's a budget tool. I know that it's a little bit less money, but it's unsafe to have handles that come loose. If Granfors can do it, if I can do it on the ones that I hang that don't come loose, I would expect someone who's doing this professionally to be able to do that. And even at this price point, at $50, $60, this is unacceptable and just shouldn't happen, especially 3 times. And number 3, what many people in the forums and online consider to be the cream of the crop, the best of the best. This is an 18 axe right here that was built for Jack. And it, on the very first day of using it, the handle had completely failed. I mean, you can see this is unacceptable here. So we're not just, the budget axes are not just having problems like the Husqvarnas, but something like this that should be absolutely perfect. The first day out we used it was loose. And then of course I did a video investigating it and there were some skullduggery going on, some hidden things that were covered up that shouldn't have been done this way. So no one's exempt. You got to be able to hang the handle right. And what it usually comes down to is 2 things. How wet is your wood? It's easy to check. I mean, you can go on Amazon, you can get a moisture meter for 20 bucks. You got to have dry wood and you've got to take the time and make sure that it fits properly. This, of all the axes, this one has been the worst, the 18. And here, of course, is the axe which I judge all others by, the Granfors Bruk. It's not the most expensive, but of all my experience, in my opinion, I think it's the best. I have 6 of these, 6 Granfors Bruk axes, and not one of them ever has given me a problem. I've used them on cold days. I've used them on hot days. Never have I had anything chip. It is the quality of the steel that I measure everything else by. But more importantly, I've never had a handle come loose. So apart from all of the working perfectly with the hand and with the body and perfect ergonomics and excellent quality steel and edge retention and all those things, the handles don't fail. I have used these axes 98% of the time over everything else I own, because I just like them. I like everything about them. And if something was going to fail, and it's something that I own that's been abused, it's been these. So, of course, Granfors Bruk is the brand that I'm going to stick with. Which model? That's the hard part. This was a tough and important decision. And so what I did is I'd already kind of made the decision last night, but I slept on it just to be sure. And what was really confirmed to me today is when I went out to the shop to go get some of the axes and to share with you, I have them in 3 different locations. I have a couple buckets, so I've got them sticking in buckets, and I've got some long-term storage on shelf. And when I went to get this axe that I'm going to share with you, it was in amongst my tools that I use all the time. And that just speaks volumes to me. Of all the things that I have and all the different options, this is the one that I keep going back to time and time again. Also, I wanted to make sure that this was a broad decision that would cover a lot of guys, you know, not just myself and my own personal needs. Not everyone has 100 acres of timber. You know, some guys maybe just go cut a little bit of firewood, or maybe they take it camping and they want something that they can keep in the truck or something you can put in a backpack. So I tried to figure all that in. This is not going to be a choice for someone that's a hardcore lumberjack. It's just not big enough. But with that being said, a full-size 3.5, 4-pound axe is not suitable for majority of people. So that's kind of what I was thinking when I came up with it. So when I decided what the number one, if I could only have one, what I decided was this, is that I would have 2. Because it's my channel and I can make the rules. So this is what I would choose. And you might be surprised. No, it's not the small forest axe that I love, that I probably use more than anything else, because if I could only have one, that's not big enough. So what I would choose, if I had to come down to it, would be the Granfors Bruk, the large forest axe would be number 1. The large forest axe is about another 4 or 5 inches, 6 inches maybe longer than the small forest axe. But what it is it is truly a 2-handed axe that you can do some real work with. It can't replace a full-size American felling axe, but it bridges the gap. It's good for splitting wood. It's not so heavy that you can't put it in a pack. You can fell medium-sized trees with it. You can split wood with it. It's got a nice strong pole in it. You can do tent stakes. It just works for everything. It is just it's just perfect. This and the small forest axe, if you're going to have 3, you know, of course that would be a nice 1-2 combination. But this is the one that I would choose. Quality, 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 made by people who understand axes, made to work with the human body, and it's just a pleasure to own. The axe, I think that the second one that I would choose, which is more, I thought it was a novelty when I first got it. And I loved it. You know, it was just so charming and cute. The little small hand axe. This is Granfors Bruk as well. But this also, both these axes I found in my toolbox because I take them all the time. Whenever I go camping, I take this little guy. Whenever I'm splitting a small kindling with a wood stove, I have this little guy. I just adore it. It's just the most wonderful thing. It is not truly an axe per se. It's almost not really even a hatchet. It's a small hand hatchet, but it's just so delightful for lots of different things. You can carve with it. You can whittle with it. You can do small detail work. I do a lot of carpentry work. I end up grabbing this thing and using it. It's good for splitting small kindling, but it's just, I think more than anything else, it gives me the fizz. It's just a delightful, delightful little treasure. I mean, you couldn't give someone a nicer gift for Christmas or birthday than one of these little Granfors Bruk hand hatchets. I mean, they're just gorgeous. So these would be the 2 that I would choose. If this is all I had in my shop, and this is all that I could access, I would. I don't think I would really miss anything else. I just think the world of them, and I love them. Now, if let's say you don't have $150, $200 to spend on an axe, and you think that that's insane, and I understand that a lot of people do. I also want to include a budget option. Let's say that you don't want to spend $150 on an axe. You're not a lumberjack, you're not a carpenter, but you want to have something that's reliable, that's not going to let you down. That decision is simple. This was also in my toolbox with the other 2, and it's the Cold Steel Trail Boss. What can you get these things for? $30, $40? No problem with the head, never loose, great ergonomics, good steel, good edge retention. I love this axe. I use it all the time. And it's also really good for throwing. A lot of positive comments about continuing with the Manly Manners. Manly Manners is a little book written in 1913 called Don'ts for Husbands. I will put a link in the description if you'd like to purchase these. They're like $4 or $5 on Amazon. Very interesting advice that helps us, and what we try to do is to see how it applies to us today. So let's jump in. Page 3. Manly Manners tells us, don't be too grave and solemn. Raise a bit of fun in the home now and then. A lot of people have, that's fun, interesting. Me and Mrs. W and I were talking about that the other day, and she was looking at some high school reunion pictures, and had that's what things she uses Facebook for, is to kind of stay acquainted with these people. And she commented on how many of her friends have turned into old people that have just kind of given up on life, and they do what they do, and they're beyond taking new adventures, or trying new things, or learning new things, or getting outside of their comfort zone. How was it Pink Floyd put it so perfectly? That they've be comfortably numb. I think that that's an easy trap to get into, and that's one thing. We get some criticism on the channel for, well, we like it when you do the way things used to be, and we like it when you did this or that. I don't want to become comfortably numb, and so that's why I always like to try new things or different things. And some folks may get frustrated. It's like, well, you tried this and you never really saw this through, or how come you're not taking this to the next level? It's because I don't want to become that person. I like to. I still feel as young as I did when I graduated high school. I don't feel old. I don't feel like, I need to settle down, need to stop doing things. I feel like I could do anything now that I ever have been able to do. Maybe not as fast, but and that's probably just because I don't I eat too much. But I think that's good advice. Is there's a lot of folks that I've ran into that have just sat down and died. My granddad was a good example. He stayed young. He retired he only had 2 jobs. After he graduated, after he got out of the service in World War II, and he worked for 2 different companies. And the only reason why he left the first job was they wouldn't let him go elk cutting. He packed up his tools and left and went elk cutting, came back and got another job, and he worked that the rest of his life till he retired. So yeah, and so but even after that, he went back to work, and he always was doing new things, and it just didn't sit down and give up. Let's continue on. I think we're on a roll here. Don't keep all of your best jokes for your men friends. Let your wife share them. I'm not very good at jokes. That doesn't really speak to me. Don't look at things solely from a man's point of view. Put yourself in your wife's place and see how you would like to like some of the things she has to put up with. Ooh, there's a lot in that one. We could do a whole video on that one. So regardless of what everyone is, or the current trend is telling us, is that there is a difference between men and women. Anyone who has lived a life and hasn't been made crazy or indoctrinated by some crazy college realizes that there's a difference between men and women. We have different. We complement one another, and there's no room in a marriage to have a war of the sexes. I'm going to go off on different extremes here because the things just come to my mind and I speak them. What's interesting in a lot of the comments that I get is when if there's something that's got to do with a mutual decision, or I'm doing something, all these comments come in. It's like, man, your wife's going to kill you. Man, Mrs. W she's going to kill you for that, or she's really going to be mad. If that's the way that the relationship that you have with your wife, man, I am sorry. That's really sad that you have to have that anger or that fear that someone is going to chastise you, or you have to be like a little child and your wife is like a mother to you, that you have to hide things or skulk around. I just don't understand that. I don't have that relationship. Do we get along all the time? Do we agree 100% on everything? No, of course not. But we respect one another, and we don't. There is none of that. I guess I don't know what that has to do with the point that I was trying to make. What that has to do with would like see things from her perspective. It doesn't make any difference. We go our own way on Manly Matters, but that's probably enough for today. So I guess the point to draw this all into conclusion is to you're never too old to try new things. I think it's just delightful when I see folks in their 80s and 90s that are signing up for classes, whether it be horticulture or bird watching or taking on new things or getting into reading. And the other thing is that be respectful towards one another. And if your wife it does that, if she's nagging you all the time and always looking over your shoulder and treating you like a child, you know what? Deal with that. You sit her down and explain to her, hey, I don't want this anymore. I want us to be equal. I want us to show respect for one another, and I think a lot of that will be cleared up by communication. Make sure that you're on the same page when you're interested in something. Let's say you want to go buy a new gun or something. Make the case. You know, don't sneak around and go buy something behind her back, and then she feels betrayed and doesn't feel like she was made part of the whole deal, because you know the resources, financial resources for the family, are for everyone, not just for you. And I think it's disrespectful to not at least consult. I'll close with this. My old neighbor, Henry, some of you guys from the Wrangler Barn days will remember Henry. He actually sadly passed away last year. This year, had to deal with his wife, Marion, that if they ever spent more than $100, then they talked about it. And I always thought that was a nice plan. And that was, you know, maybe that's a little bit low. You have to set that for your own family member. But he harped on that all the time, and he considered that to be one of the main successes for why he had a successful marriage and why they got along so well, because finances are probably the #1 point of contention in marriages. So be open, put it out there and discuss it and show your loved ones respect. And if you want something, it's important to you, explain that to them and make the case, and make sure that there's reciprocity with that too. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next video.